The night was so still that even our footsteps felt too loud for the open snowfield, and the sky above stretched in long ribbons of color that moved like something breathing. We had joked all day about the old stories, repeating them like campfire lines that lost their power in sunlight. But out here, in the silence, they felt heavier, older, waiting. Then the lights shifted. A single streak of green tore free from the sky and dropped toward us with a sound like cracking ice. The ground trembled. Snow flew upward in a bright plume, and a glowing shape pulsed where it landed, almost as if it were looking back at us. For a heartbeat, nothing made sense. What if this light wasn't a myth at all? And why did it fall right where we stood? The cold tightened around us as the glow faded, leaving a strange ringing in the air, the kind that feels like it's inside your chest, rather than around you. We didn't speak at first, because every instinct said the silence had changed, like the land listened differently now. The snow settled slowly, drifting back into the crater as if trying to hide what had happened. A faint trail of warmth reached toward us, cutting a thin line through the frost. Something out here wanted to be found, or avoided. And as we took our first hesitant steps closer, the wind shifted in a way that felt almost like a warning. We followed the thin glowing trail without speaking, each step crunching softly in the untouched snow as the strange light guided us deeper into the field. The air felt warmer the closer we got, though the temperature should have been dropping fast. The trail curved gently, like it knew exactly where it wanted us to go, and the darkness beyond seemed to shift with every heartbeat. It felt too deliberate, too alive. And for a moment a thought crept in that we weren't following the trail, we were being led by it. The trail ended at a rise in the snow, where the wind suddenly died, leaving the air unnervingly still. A hollow space lay carved beneath the drift, as though something had tunneled upward from below. The snow walls glistened with the same strange color as the orb, but the glow here was softer, almost tired. The opening breathed warm air into the cold night, carrying a faint hum that pressed against our ears. Whatever had fallen from the sky had not come alone, and this place felt like a doorway waiting for something to step out. We leaned closer, listening to the hum deep inside the hollow, when a sudden crack tore through the silence. The ground shook just enough to make us lose balance, snow sliding under our boots as the glow pulsed, once like a heartbeat. A distant echo answered from somewhere beyond the ridge, low and resonant, as if calling back to the hollow beneath us. The air tightened. The night felt thinner, and in that moment, we realized we were standing between two things trying to find each other. The humming from the hollow followed us as we moved away, threading through the air like it didn't want to lose our trail. The orb's faint glow pulsed against the inside of the pack, and every few steps it sent a warm ripple up our arms, subtle but impossible to ignore. The sky above shifted again, the colors tightening into narrow bands that seemed to point somewhere ahead. Even the wind had changed, blowing in short, uneasy bursts as if pushing us forward. Something out there was moving with purpose, and the land felt tense, like it was waiting for the next step we would take. We reached the edge of the forest where the air felt heavier, carrying the scent of frozen bark and something else. Something metallic. The wind died as soon as we stepped between the trees. Branches creaked softly, not from movement but from pressure, as though something unseen brushed past them. The orb's warmth grew stronger, steadying into a slow rhythm that felt like it wanted to guide us. Every faint sound echoed too clearly. Our breaths, the crunch of snow, something shifting far behind us. It didn't feel like we had entered the forest. It felt like the forest had closed around us. The trail the orb had shown us earlier appeared again in fleeting glimmers between the trees, almost like it resurfaced when we needed it most. We followed quietly, each step more cautious than the last. The deeper we went, the stranger the forest felt. Snow clung to the air instead of falling, frozen in place as though time had slowed. Footprints, our own, seemed to fade behind us as soon as we made them. Something in the forest wanted the path clear, clean, untouched, and with every step forward, the feeling of being watched sharpened, settling between our shoulders like weight. Not long after, we found signs we weren't alone. Branches snapped at odd angles, snow disturbed in careful, deliberate patterns, boot prints half erased, as if someone didn't want them noticed. The warm pulse inside the pack shifted, turning quicker, almost urgent. The forest darkened around us, swallowing the aurora's glow. Something ahead moved, quiet, steady, familiar in shape but wrong in motion. When it paused, so did we, and for a moment all we could hear was the pounding inside the pack and the faint crackle of tension freezing the air between us and whatever waited up ahead. The figure stepped forward, and for a moment relief washed over us. It looked human, but the way it held its posture, the stiffness in its movements, the slow tilt of its head toward the pack on Rowan's back made that relief fade fast. It didn't speak, didn't raise a hand, didn't show its face from beneath its fur-lined hood. It simply stood there, listening to the pulse of the orb like it was waiting for permission. When it finally took one deliberate step closer, the forest reacted. Trees groaned, snow shifted, and the air thickened, pulling all sound away. Something had found us, and it was here for the light we carried. The stranger didn't move as we backed away, but the way the forest shifted around him made it clear he wasn't alone. Shadows twisted in the corners of our vision, moving with subtle purpose, guiding us toward a narrow path that hadn't been there moments before. The pack on my back throbbed with heat, almost urging us forward. When we finally stepped onto the path, the air changed. Warmer, stiller, carrying the faint scent of smoke and something herbal. It felt like crossing a threshold, and as we followed the winding trail between the trees, the glow of hidden lanterns appeared ahead, revealing a settlement that shouldn't have been possible this deep in the wilderness. The village appeared like a memory carved into the snow, silent and tucked into the land with a kind of reverence. Wooden homes built low to withstand. Storms glowed softly from within, their windows flickering with orange firelight. People stepped out as we approached, faces cautious, eyes locked onto the faint light leaking from the pack on my back. No one spoke at first. It felt like we had interrupted something sacred. Then, an older figure stepped forward with slow, deliberate steps that made the crowd part. He watched us with the calm of someone who had been expecting this moment far longer than we realized. The elder raised his hand in a silent request for calm, and the crowd obeyed instantly. His eyes shifted to the pack, and the warmth pulsing from inside it quickened like it recognized him. He gestured for us to follow, leading us between homes toward a circular clearing ringed with carved stones. Everything about the place felt intentional, like it was designed for moments exactly like this. As we stepped inside the circle, the air thickened with heat from beneath the snow, and the pulse of the orb sensed with the faint vibration humming through the ground. The elder finally spoke, his voice low and steady, telling us we had brought something home. He explained that the skylights were not spirits in the way stories claimed, but visitors bound to the land through an ancient pact. They watched, they wandered, and sometimes one fell. Never by accident. The orb, he said, was part of them, a piece of a greater whole meant to return to the sky. But lately, something had changed. The Skyborn had grown restless, descending closer than ever before, and when one fell this time, it wasn't a gift. It was a warning. His voice cracked as he admitted the village had been waiting for someone from outside to bring balance back, because the sky no longer listened to them. Before we could ask what he meant, the sky above the clearing rippled violently, forcing the village lights to flicker. A beam of color snapped downward, fading just before it touched the ground. The orb inside the pack thrashed with heat so intense it shook through my shoulders. Villagers gasped and backed away as Elder Cavo's expression hardened with fear. He didn't bother to hide. He told us we weren't the only ones following the fallen light. Others wanted it too. And now that we had entered the village, they would come for all of us. The clearing trembled beneath our feet as the sky above twisted in shapes that didn't belong to clouds or light. The orb throbbed so fiercely inside the pack that each pulse made the straps tug against my shoulders. Elder Kavo led us toward a shelter at the edge of the village, moving faster than his age suggested, muttering words that felt older than the snow itself. Behind us, the villagers hurried to extinguish lanterns, their shadows stretching long across the ice. Something in the sky was searching, sweeping in slow arcs that made the air hum like a warning. And deep inside the pack, the orb beat back, as if trying to answer. Inside the shelter, the world felt muffled, as though the thick wooden walls strained to hold back the sky's pressure. The orb's warmth spread like a restless heartbeat, filling the cramped space with uneven waves of heat. Elder Kavo placed his hand over the pack without touching it, whispering that the Skyborn were calling for their lost peace, but something blocked their path. He looked at us with a mix of guilt and urgency, explaining that the villagers had once promised never to interfere again. But the pact had been broken long before we arrived. The Skyborn were angry, and now, with the orb awake, their anger was closing in. Before Elder Kavo could continue, the shelter walls vibrated with a strange rhythm, like something massive brushing past from the outside. Snow sifted down from the ceiling with every pulse. The elder stiffened, listening with an expression that made the hairs on my arms rise. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate, crunched outside, stopping right beside the door. The orb flared so brightly it lit the interior like midday. Mira instinctively grabbed my arm, her breath sharp and fast. Whatever waited outside wasn't a villager, and it wasn't the Skyborn either. It was something that had been tracking us long before we reached the village. The door swung open with a slow, creaking groan, letting in wind so cold it stole the air from our lungs. A tall figure stepped inside, its face hidden beneath a thick hood, its coat crusted in frost. It was the same shape we had seen in the forest, human but wrong in its stillness. Elder Kavo moved between us and the figure, voice stern but trembling as he demanded it leave. The figure didn't speak. Instead, it lifted its head just enough for the orb's light to reveal pale, glassy eyes that reflected nothing. When it finally raised its arm, the air bent around it, warping like heat over fire, and the orb answered with a surge that nearly burned through the pack. The figure lunged, but the orb erupted before it reached us. A shockwave of green fire blasted outward, throwing us to the ground and sending the intruder crashing into the snow outside. The shelter shuddered as lights streaked across the sky in rapid, frantic bursts. Elder Kavo shouted that the Skyborn had sensed the attack and would descend, not to help us, but to reclaim what belonged to them. As we scrambled to our feet, the orb's glow shifted from warning to something desperate, almost pleading. Outside, the intruder was already rising again, and far above, the lights in the sky began falling one by one. The falling lights tore across the sky in long, burning trails, each one shaking the ground with a low hum as they passed overhead. The intruder staggered but didn't stop, its movements jerky and unbroken, as if pain meant nothing to it. Elder Kavo urged us toward the far end of the village, where the trees thickened and the land dipped away into a hidden ravine. The orb beat wildly, pushing heat through the pack like it was trying to break free. Every instinct told me to drop it and run, but something deeper, something I didn't understand, kept my hands locked around it. And behind us, the intruder's footsteps returned, steady and unyielding. We plunged into the trees, branches whipping against our coats as the snow thickened into a swirling curtain. The intruder didn't slow. Its steps pressed into the snow without leaving a sound, gliding more than walking. The orb's light leaked through the seams of the pack, painting the woods in shifting hues that made every shadow move, like it was alive. Elder Kavo shouted that the ravine ahead held an old path, a place where the Skyborn couldn't reach us directly, but something else could. His voice wavered, not from fear of the sky, but from something he hadn't yet told us, and the intruder kept closing the distance. We reached the ravine just as the skyborn lights above twisted into a spiral, creating a funnel of color that pulsed with a low, bone-deep vibration. Elder Cavo pointed to a narrow pass cut into the rock, its entrance half hidden beneath drifting snow. The orb reacted instantly, shaking the pack against my back like a trapped heartbeat trying to escape. Mira grabbed my arm, insisting we needed answers before going any deeper. But the ground trembled as the intruder stepped into the clearing behind us. The skyborn's spiraling column brightened, flashing with a warning that felt aimed at the land itself. Time was gone. Choices were shrinking. Elder Cavo finally confessed the truth. Years ago, the village had captured a fallen skyborn fragment, believing it would protect them. Instead, it corrupted the land, warping creatures and people who touched it. The intruder, he said, had once been a villager who tried to return the fragment but was changed by its energy. When the orb fell this time, the corrupted remnant awakened and began hunting for its missing piece. The Skyborn weren't descending for vengeance. They were descending to reclaim what humans had twisted. The forest groaned around us as if hearing the old sins spoken aloud, and the intruder's head snapped toward Cavo as though recognizing the truth. Snow exploded upward as the intruder lunged, but the orb burst free of the pack before it reached us. The light blasted into the air, hovering between the intruder and the skyborn spiral above. For a moment, everything froze. The land, the wind, even the falling snow. Then the intruder let out a broken human sound as the light tore through its chest, revealing a hollow core that pulsed with faint, corrupted glow. The sky above roared in answer, the spiral tightening as if pulling the orb upward. But the orb hesitated, flickering violently, torn between the sky and something grounded here with us. Whatever choice it made next would decide more than our survival. The air rippled as the orb hung trembling above us, caught between the pull of the sky and the corrupted glow, leaking from the intruder's broken form. The spiral of lights overhead tightened until it resembled a great eye staring down, its colors swirling in uneasy hunger. A deep vibration spread through the ravine, shaking loose snow from the cliffs and sending thin cracks crawling along the ice beneath our feet. Elder Cavo shouted for us to move back, but the orb's warmth pinned us in place, flooding the air with a heat that felt alive. Even the wind seemed afraid to enter the space between the orb and the sky. Something was about to choose. The orb suddenly collapsed inward, shrinking into a tight sphere of blinding green, before exploding outward in a ring of soundless force. We were thrown back against the ravine walls, breath torn from our lungs. When vision returned, the orb had extended faint tendrils of light toward both the intruder and the sky, flickering between them like a torn signal trying to decide its destination. The intruder convulsed, its hollow form trembling as corrupted light fought to hold the orb down. Above, the skyborn spiral widened, releasing beams that felt like calls, soft, sorrowful, pleading. The orb quivered violently, trapped between past mistakes and the pull of its own world. Elder Cavo shouted that the orb couldn't return until the corruption was severed, and his words carried a weight that hit harder than the wind. Mira turned toward me with a look that said she understood what I didn't want to admit. The orb had linked itself to us too, through every moment we carried it. Its warmth pulsed like recognition, and the corruption tugged at that connection, pulling it deeper into the earth. The ravine darkened as the skyborn lights dimmed, waiting. For the first time, the orb's glow faltered, flickering like a heartbeat losing rhythm. If we did nothing, it would fall completely. And then the skyborn would come down, not with purpose, but with fury. Mira grabbed my hand and pulled me forward, shouting that the orb reacted to intention, not force. As soon as we stepped closer, heat surged outward, burning through our gloves but filling our limbs with a strange calm. Together we reached toward the orb, and the moment our hands met its pulsing surface, The world snapped into silence. A flood of images burst through us. Memories not ours. Visions of the skyborn drifting in endless dark. Their shapes like living auroras. They weren't spirits or gods. They were travelers, scattered watchers, trying to reunite with what had been taken. And the corruption below us, buried in the land, was their broken fragment begging to be undone. The orb drew strength from our touch, its light swelling until it lit the entire ravine like dawn. The corrupted glow inside the intruder cracked apart, crumbling into drifting shards that dissolved before hitting the ground. For the first time, his eyes shifted, no longer empty, but frightened and human. Then the orb tore free from our hands and shot upward, dragging a beam of brilliance behind it. The skyborn spiral opened wide, welcoming it with a rising hum that shook the cliffs. But before the orb vanished into the sky, it released a final pulse. A goodbye, a thank you, or a warning. The sky churned above as the remaining lights began to descend, not with anger, but with purpose. The skyborn spiral widened until it filled the entire sky, its colors flowing together like a living river of light. The air hummed with a warmth that felt nothing like the cold world around us. For a moment, everything was still. No wind, no cracking snow, no distant echoes, just the lingering glow of the orb's path. Rising into the heavens, Elder Cavo steadied himself, whispering that the return had begun, that the long broken balance was finally shifting back into place. But beneath his relief was something heavier, a worry he didn't voice. The Skyborn were returning, yes, but they were not leaving, and the land was already changing in ways that couldn't be undone. The light above softened, pulling itself inward until the sky shimmered like a curtain of warm breath. Through it, shapes formed, tall figures of drifting color, their bodies bending like soft ribbons in windless air. They didn't touch the ground, yet the snow vibrated beneath their presence. One descended lower, its glow wrapping around the broken intruder, lifting him with a gentleness that made the fear in his eyes melt into something like relief. Elder Cavo bowed his head deeply, whispering that the Skyborn didn't punish. They healed what could be healed, and reclaimed what couldn't. The world felt smaller, standing beneath them, like we were witnesses to something meant for an older time. As the Skyborn lifted the intruder higher, the spiral shifted, folding inward like a vast doorway closing. The light dimmed, but the warmth stayed, settling over the ravine like the last note of a long, ancient song. Elder Cavo stepped closer to us, his expression heavy with a truth he'd held too long. The Skyborn sought harmony, not worship. They only appeared when balance fractured. And now that they had answered the call, the land itself would change again. He told us the falling orb had chosen us for a reason, not because we were destined, but because we were willing to listen. The spiral's hum faded, but its message lingered inside our bones. When the last of the Skyborn vanished into the narrowing glow, the ravine fell silent, except for our breaths. Snow began to fall again. Soft, natural, untouched by strange currents or bending light. The intruder was gone, taken somewhere we couldn't follow. We climbed back toward the village with Elder Cavo leading slowly, his steps heavier than before. The homes glowed with warm firelight, villagers waiting in quiet clusters. Their faces softened with relief when they saw us, but something deeper passed between them, an understanding that their world had changed forever. And we were part of that change now, whether we meant to be or not. At the center of the village, Elder Cavo thanked us, not for saving them, but for choosing to carry something we never understood, and still refusing to run from it. He said the Skyborn would not vanish entirely. They would remain closer now, watching the land heal. The orb's final pulse still echoed faintly through the air, like a memory that refused to fade. As we prepared to leave the village at dawn, the sky brightened with a curtain of soft green, peaceful, steady, no longer twisting in distress. Maybe the lights had always been watching. Maybe they always would, but now, for the first time, watching felt like protection instead of warning.